Hey everyone, it's Josh and welcome back to your fourth stimulus package and news update. In today's video, we have a lot of news to get into, but first, if you would like to receive 1 free stock from Robinhood and 2 free stocks from Webull, valued up to over $2,000, make sure to claim them by clicking my links, which you will find in the description box below. Okay, so this week, the main story and the main goal for Democratic leaders will be to pass bills dealing with voting rights, and once that vote fails, the filibuster. And at this point, it's very clear the voting rights bills will fail due to not having any Republican support, which would cause them to fall short of the 60 votes they would need. Also last week, in case you missed it, both Joe Manchin and Kyrsten Sinema were adamant that they weren't in favor of getting rid of the filibuster. If they were for getting rid of it and they voted to rid the filibuster, they would then be able to pass the voting rights bills or any other bill with just 50 votes, and no Republican support whatsoever. Now, one alternative to the voting rights bills is one that a bipartisan group is creating, which would change the Electoral Count Act of 1887. Of course, with mass inflation, a labor shortage, and supply chain issues, most Americans don't really have these voting rights bills as a top priority. And this is one thing that Democratic Senator Tim Kaine was confronted with on Sunday. While being interviewed on Face the Nation, he's asked, why are you only talking about things that have failed or will fail and not addressing the real concerns among Americans, such as inflation and the economy?
Democratic strategist James Carville was on another network this morning, and he said Democrats whine too much. He said you're not talking. He said you're not talking enough about the infrastructure bill you just passed. You're talking about things that have failed, and you have a vote scheduled this week that will also fail on voting rights. Why do you think that is an effective strategy to have high-profile failures rather than talk about the things that people are saying do matter to them on the economy and inflation?
Well, Margaret, I do think we are talking a lot about the infrastructure bill. Certainly I am in Virginia, and whether it's broadband, road, rail, bridges, ports, airports, electricity grid, it's going to mean a lot of good for every zip code in the country. With respect to voting rights, look, whatever the pundits say, makes political sense. It is such an existential issue. Those of us who survived the attack on the Capitol January 6th and are witnessing wholesale efforts around the country to make it harder for people to vote and to undermine the integrity of elections, we have to do this. We all have to be recorded at this moment in time about where are we in protecting the right to vote. Right now, it doesn't look like it has the votes to pass, but we're going to cancel our Martin Luther King Day recess and be there this week because we think it's so important for the country. And we will be voting both on the bills, but also on, if we can't get Republican support for the bills, we have uniform Democratic support. Could we find a path to make some rules adjustments to pass them?
Obviously, this was a very good question. While some could argue it could be easier to vote, there are definitely better issues that need to be addressed. When inflation is rising by 7% year over year, affecting each and every American's wallet, I'm pretty sure more people are concerned about that. Kaine is then asked about getting rid of the filibuster, and while they don't have the votes to make that happen, what their path forward will be.
But you don't have the votes to suspend that 60 vote threshold. So what kind of mechanism are you envisioning here that's somehow going to get this through?
As of right now, Margaret, we don't have all 50 Democrats on board with rules changes, but there are a couple of different paths. Some involve rules changes like a carve out to the filibuster, but there's other paths that we could take where the 60 vote threshold is only if you want to limit debate. We could do longer debate and then end the debate and have a simple majority. But we will have a vote on the bills, and we will have a vote on a rules path to get there because it's so important for the country.
Kaine is also asked about the speech Biden gave last week, where he compared his Republican counterparts and anyone else who opposes him as the likes of Jefferson Davis and Bull Connor, with the promise of unifying America rather than further dividing them, as he claimed Donald Trump did. He's essentially calling 50% of Americans as the same people as slave-owning racist. This is what Kaine's thoughts were on Biden's comments.
The president, as you know, gave this very high-profile speech this past week in Georgia. He's called the local law there Jim Crow 2.0. In that speech that he gave, he compared his opponents to Bull Connor, Jefferson Davis, which Republican leader Mitch McConnell said was akin to saying, agree with me or you are a bigot. How does characterizing opponents like that actually win over any kind of Republican support? Isn't the president hobbling himself?
You know, Margaret, I read those comments differently. Joe Biden was tough in his words, but I think what he said is in the 1960s, say the Voting Rights Act of 1965, people, including people of goodwill, had to decide were they going to stand on the side of Bull Connor or stand on the side of John Lewis. It was the same point that Martin Luther King made in his famous letter to the Birmingham jail. He said, I'm writing to people of goodwill. You may not be bigots and you may not be pro-discrimination, but this is a moment in time where you have to decide which side you're going to stand with. In these efforts to hobble minority votes and put up stunts and schemes in people's way, all people of goodwill have to decide where they're going to stand.
So you disagree with Senator Dick Durbin, who said the president may have gone too far there. I mean, is there any outreach to Republicans here who have signaled some willingness on the Electoral Count Act or other measures?
Margaret, I've been engaged in outreach to Republicans on voting rights since July and have found zero support. With the exception of Senator Lisa Murkowski, who is a co-sponsor of the John Lewis bill, we can get no co-sponsors despite repeated efforts. When we put the bill up on the floor to proceed to it, they vote against even debating the bill, knowing that they could block its passage. They don't even want to talk about it. So I thank Senator Murkowski for being a supporter of restoring the pre-clearance provisions in the John Lewis bill, but thus far she's been the only one who has been willing to put her name to support for any of these provisions.
So Kane here believes that Biden actually didn't go too far. Kane, indeed, is saying what Biden said is absolutely true. Finally, Kane is also asked about what was once the biggest topic in Washington, the Build Back Better bill. Since Manchin doubled down on his refusal to support the bill just before Christmas, we haven't really heard all that much. No further conversations have taken place, and instead, Democrats have only been talking about these pieces of legislation dealing with voting rights. To this, Kane said he believes the overall bill is dead, but that core revisions in the bill will pass. These key provisions, he says, are education, workforce, and things like reduced childcare and education expenses.
Yeah. You were with us back in November when a Republican won the governorship in your home state. You blame that Democratic loss on congressional Democrats who you said just blew the timing of infrastructure, workforce, and education. Congressional Democrats have majorities in both houses, and the American public expects us to deliver. Clock is ticking here ahead of those midterm races. What do Democrats need to deliver on in order to hold on to any kind of majority?
You're right, Margaret. I think we could have won that race had we done infrastructure a month earlier. Now we have delivered on the far-reaching American Rescue Plan. We have delivered on a once-in-a-generation infrastructure investment, although a month too late. I think we have to go into that Build Back Better bill and do the core provisions that reduce costs for Americans in these key areas. If we do that, we'll speak to their inflation concern. We'll help people out in every zip code in this country. I think we've got to do that. And it is my hope that we will find a path. Although the Vegas odds may not be great, we need to find a path to protect democracy from an assault that is being led by President Trump and his followers all over this country.
So Kane, like many Democrats, aren't willing to just sit around and watch this bill die. In reality, they probably really only have around 10 more months to get this done, with the midterm elections coming up in November. And at this point, by all predictions, Republicans will be taking back not just the House, but probably the Senate as well. If that were to happen, given their pure opposition to the bill, we can very much expect for it to die fully, which would also tie up President Biden's hands for the remainder of his presidency. Again though, a lot can happen and a lot can change in just a matter of a few weeks, so we'll just have to wait and see how all of this unfolds. But on that note, I'm going to go ahead and wrap up this video. Again, if you would like to go ahead and grab 1 free stock from Robinhood and 2 free stocks from Webull today, make sure to go ahead and claim them by clicking my links, which you will find in the description box below. So once again, I do hope that everyone has a great and safe rest of their day, and as usual, I'll see you in the next video.